think we're going to start. Maybe. Welcome. So this is the most important slide. It has my contact information. And what you may have noticed already is that I'm incredibly old. Probably wondering how I even managed to get around. 2 days ago, I had a birthday. And I saved a special day in Rome for my birthday. It was my birthday present to myself. I got to go back to, because I've already seen the Colosseum and the Forum and the Pantheon, and it was the celebration of the unification of Italy. March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. And when I arrived at the Victor Emmanuel Monument, the brass bands were out. All the military were on display. The Italian Air Force was flying overhead, displaying 3 colors of smoke as they went by. I thought, this is all for my birthday. Wow, what a wonderful way to become 74. So thank you, Italy, for a wonderful birthday. So I only talk about things I really care about. Since I know I'm closer to the end than to the beginning, I don't want to waste time. So this is definitely one of the things I care about. We already heard Microsoft is changing the world, and I see Code Motion is talking about changing the world. So everybody talks about that, but how do you do it? So I'm going to address some myths. Wait, does that translate? What's a myth in Italian? Oh, okay. So you know what it means. It's something we all believe, but it isn't true. We have a lot of myths, cultural myths, religious myths, technical myths. And what I'm going to do is talk about patterns that will help us address those myths. And if you're here today, but you know a colleague or a friend, somebody in your family who should have heard the presentation, one of the things that I try to do nowadays is give my presentations away. So if you send me some email, I will send you the PowerPoint, and you can give the talk, because I don't have time. I'm going to talk about patterns. I'm assuming everybody knows a little bit about patterns. You probably saw the design patterns that appeared in the 90s. Well, I have written a lot of books and articles about patterns, and I'm a believer. I have passion for patterns. What it does is provide us a way to name a combination of a problem and a solution that we see over and over again so we can talk about it. That vocabulary, that pattern language gives us a way to talk about design, architecture, testing, and also organizational change. So I think patterns are a very good way to look at the problems that we have and find a way to look at known solutions. So this is a book I wrote 10 years ago with my good friend Mary Lynn Mans. And along the way, I'm going to go through a little interview after this talk, and somebody is going to ask me, well, how did you move from being a technical person, because I have a PhD in computer science and I've spent most of my career doing technical things, to talking about organizational change? And the answer I give to that question all the time is, it was writing this book. Along the way, I discovered something called social psychology. Well, I knew what psychology was, but I had no idea that social psychology is the psychology of groups, and it provides us real evidence, real science that tells us how we behave when we make decisions, when we solve problems, when we think together. And since that's what we do all day, is solve problems, make decisions, think together, we should be looking at the research in social psychology. I also had heard of influence, but I didn't really understand it. I thought influence, well, that's something marketing people do, business people do, but technical people, oh, well, no, we don't do that, do we? And then evolutionary biology, those scientists are telling us that we do things because we're hardwired, because we've been doing them for over 10,000 years, and we're not going to change that behavior, no matter how many technical gadgets we produce. So we're stuck with it. There's now a new book out. I brought a copy with me, just came out a few months ago, and I'm going to give this away to the third person who comes up to me today and asks a very interesting question. Person number 3 will get the book. So find me today and ask a question. If you're number 3, you can take that home. I think this is really interesting. I have a quote from Jeff Patton. Do you know him? A great user interface designer. He said exactly what the Microsoft guy and CodeMotion are saying. You're not here to build software. You're here to change the world. I believe that. I just think we don't know how to do it. So here's the first myth. Let's take a poll. How many smart people in the audience? Smart people? How many smart people? No smart people over here? Sorry. Okay. Smart people? Yes? Okay. Very good. And you, the smart people, we'll just leave those people over here. You, the smart people, are rational thinkers? Yes? Oh, we have 2 rational thinkers. Okay, great. Are you married?
No, not yet.
Okay. Are you married? Maybe you are. Was that rational? Well, perhaps it was. Did you make a little decision table? The good things on one side, the bad things on the other, and prioritize, assign values, and then add them up. Did you do that? You didn't do that. I have known people who did that exactly, so I'm not sure. So would you agree that maybe that was not a rational decision, not logical to get married? Well, okay, there are some things we do that are not rational. We might agree. Yeah, would you? A few things, maybe. Well, here's the bad news. There's a new field of economics. It's called behavioral economics. If you have not read the book in the middle, Thinking Fast and Slow, anybody? Hire this guy. If you have not read it, you should read it. If you have read it, you should read it again. Because in it is real evidence from social psychology that created the field of behavioral economics. And the results of those studies say we are never, not just for getting married, but we are never rational decision makers. All our decisions are made for illogical reasons. Now, here's what we are very good at. After we have made the decision to get married, take a job, come to code motion, we're very good at explaining why we did it. There's a word for that in English. I don't know whether it translates or not. Does anybody know the word for that? What do we call that? Here's the reason why I did something. What is that called? Anybody? Yes, it's called rationalization. The explanation after the fact. Because we have to have that in order to move forward. But here's what, it's really sad. We're making it up. Because we have no idea why we made that decision. It's unknown, it's hidden. I recommend Daniel Kahneman's book. He won a Nobel Prize for his research. And then on the right, I was just in Israel. Such a difference in time, how time is regarded in Israel and Italy. They both start with I, but Italy, Israel, very different. Anything by Daniel Kahneman is good. Anything by Dan Ariely. He has a wonderful set of TED Talks. So if you don't have a lot of time to read books, listen to some of Dan Ariely's TED Talks. He looks at how irrational we are. In fact, this book is called Predictably Irrational. You can plan on it. You know ahead of time that our decisions are not going to be rational. In the United States, we just had another round of problems with the stock market. This probably never happens in Italy. The stock market starts to go down, stocks go down. And then what do people do when stocks go down? They get panicky, they get afraid, and then while the price is decreasing, while the price is getting lower and lower and lower, they sell. It's not very rational, is it? This is the advice: buy low, sell high. Now, when the stock market begins to recover and the prices start to go up again, then people feel better and they start to buy. So they sell low, buy high. I'm sure that never happens here. You in Italy are very rational people. You would always remember to make that decision rationally, not based on emotion. Would you? No. So we need some patterns. What we know is if we're going to change the world, or if we're going to convince anybody of anything, we're going to have passion for it. It's emotion that rules the day, not logic. Instead of preparing a logical argument and a nice PowerPoint presentation about why, well, whatever your new idea is, why people should adopt it, you should at first be enthusiastic about it. You should first believe in it. Because if you don't believe in it, you'll never convince anybody of anything. And then the next series of patterns are about, well, a lot of little experiments. Try something and then think about it. Stop and then look at what works really well and then try the next baby step. That's really what agile development is all about. That's really what introducing new ideas is all about. That's what changing yourself, your organization, your team, your world. It's about little experiments. Just try something. Stop and think about it. What works well, and then take the next baby step. Do that over and over again. You don't make change by edict. You don't make change by saying, at the end of 2017, we are all going to have moved to agile development. That's not how it happens. It happens in little tiny cycles of delivery and testing and feedback. And along the way, things are not always going to work well. So we have to be comfortable with failure, because that gives us a chance to learn. In fact, failure is, according to the social psychologists, that's the only way we do learn. When we fall down. That's what we did as babies. Babies fall down when they're learning to walk, make mistakes. We need to all be babies again. Oh no, I've just told you you're not rational. This one is really hard. Because so many times when we're enthusiastic about a new idea and we want to change the world, we believe in goodness. We believe that our idea is good. We believe that that should be a selling point. We believe that that should be influential. Because our ideas are so good, people should line up. People should be convinced. People should say, yes, yes, I want to do that. Can you think of a time, maybe a time in history, when there was a conflict between a good idea and a bad idea, and the bad idea won? It could have been a political idea, it could have been a religious idea, it could have been a technical idea. Can you think of a time when the bad idea? You know what's going on in the United States right now? Let's talk about bad ideas. Yeah, let's talk about the Republican candidate for the presidential nomination, Donald Trump. You want to talk about a bad idea? There's a bad idea. And so far, he's winning. Who would have thought? What's going on there? So there's no way we can count on goodness or intelligence. That's one of the problems we have, is we have a bias. It's called the just world fallacy. We want to believe in goodness. We want to believe the good guys will win. Oh. I know you're not going to see the connection here. I know that in Italy you appreciate food. Oh, this is the world of gelato. I have gelato every day when I'm in Italy. I love gelato. So I know you understand the power of food. Perhaps you don't know that there were a lot of experiments done with food where people were given a presentation, say, about a new idea or a political issue, or so they randomly assigned people to two groups. They gave each group the same presentation about the new idea. The difference is one group, I know you're not as intelligent, so I'll let you have the food over here. So one group got food, and the other group did not. But otherwise, the treatment was exactly the same. Now, do you suppose when the final vote was taken or the decision was made that having food would make any difference in how the groups voted? What do you think? What do you think? Yeah. Would I be talking about it if it didn't? Of course. Yeah, of course. The group that got food supported the issue. Now, here's the interesting part. It doesn't matter whether the idea is a good one. You can present an idea that's actually bad. We're going to increase taxes. If you are students, we're going to raise your tuition. It doesn't matter what the idea is. If you feed them, they will vote for it. Oh, there is one thing. It doesn't matter about the quality of the idea, but it does matter about the quality of the food. Yes, of the food. Because if you give them bad food, they won't vote for it, even if it's a good idea. We don't like to think that about ourselves, do we? That what I do depends upon whether or not you give me good food or not. But the research is pretty clear. We are influenced by food and a lot of other things. We're not as good at paying attention to goodness. We're not very good at analysis of the idea. We're more likely to be swept up in the charismatic personality of the evangelist or whether or not he's bringing in gelato. I gave this talk in London once, and a gentleman came up afterwards and he said, I know how that works. In our organization, we have Maria's rule. There are very few problems that cake cannot solve. And he sent me a beautiful picture of one of Maria's cakes. There's an enormous amount of research around food. One of those studies shows that even in negotiations, serious legal negotiations over contracts, things work better if they are eating while they look at the contract details. I like that pattern. Oh my. How many believe this? If only I were the CEO. If only I were the president, I could make people change. Oh, okay, thank you very much. Thank you. One person, two people, three. Good. Oh, all right, now you're brave. See, if one person raises a hand, then all of a sudden, that's actually been shown in a lot of studies. So here's the research data. Yes, you're right. Power is effective. If you threaten people, we will do this or I will fire you. That's very effective. I was once giving this presentation at a big telecom company, and the vice president came up to me afterwards and he said, Linda, these are nice patterns, but I don't need them. I tell people what to do. And if they don't do it, then I fire them. Yes, it's very effective. So is killing. If you kill people, you say, do this or I will kill you. Yes, that is very effective. Yeah. The problem with that is that what you get is something called, and I don't know if this translates or not, it's called compliance. Does that? Yeah, compliance. The problem with compliance is that, for one, it takes increasing amounts of force, lots and lots of pressure. Over time, people become resistant. They fight back against that. And so the force, whether it's firing or killing, has to increase. It takes an enormous amount of overhead to enforce that. If you want to force people in your organization to go agile, and you have a group of people who are the enforcers, and they run around and look at all of the projects and make sure they're doing agile, then over time what you'll find is you have to have more and more people who are monitoring that behavior. It's expensive. The second problem is, as soon as the force goes away, then so does the behavior. People will revert to doing exactly what they did before. You haven't really changed anybody. You don't have, it's called commitment. I do it because I believe in it. I do it because I want to. That's different. You cannot get commitment with force. And that's what you want. In your organization, in your world, you want people to do it because they believe in it. You want people to do it because they also feel it's a good thing. That they're willing to do it because they, just like you, become evangelists, leaders of change. They will go out and help you change your organization because they believe in it, not just because somebody is making them do it. I don't know if you've read Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Another, if you have read it, read it again. If you haven't read it, you should definitely read it. He said, you can buy a person's contribution, you can buy his hands, but you cannot buy his heart. His heart is where his enthusiasm is, his loyalty. You can buy his back, but you cannot buy his brain. That's where his creativity, his ingenuity, his resourcefulness, you can't buy that. The pattern is called personal touch. That for every person you want to change, every person in your team or in your organization, in your world, is asking the same question. Why should I? Why should I care? What's in it for me? What's the advantage for me? What's the benefit for me? And if you're going to make change, you have to address that question. A quote again from Jeff Patton, it's got to be genuine. You can't just collect data. He was talking about users, but it's the same for changing an organization. Is It's not just a matter of looking at numbers. It's a matter of looking at people. And what do they really want? And what do they really care about? And that's going to be different for every person you talk to. You can't just prepare a straight line PowerPoint presentation and get up and deliver it over and over and over again to testers, developers, managers, executives. No, they're all looking for different things, and you must address that. That means you have to understand where they're coming from. So one thing we know is that in any organization, people are going to respond to change differently. Most of you, just because you're here at this conference, most of you belong to a couple of groups called the innovators or the early adopters. You like change. You like new things. You want to hear about new ideas. But in most organizations, there's only a few of you. The percentages in a normal population are 2.5% for innovators, 13.5% for early adopters. Those two groups of people, they're easy. You just give them information. You tell them about continuous delivery or the latest tool or whatever it is that you've run across in this conference that you're excited about. You just tell them about it. And usually if they're innovators or adopters, they say, this sounds interesting. It's new stuff. I want to do it. Well, but right underneath the early adopters are early majority, a huge group, over a third. And their question or their response is, well, what are other people doing? And they're not willing to step out and take a risk and try something new just because it's new and it sounds cool. No. They're not going to buy that product. They're not going to use that new interface until they know that a lot of other people are also using it successfully, people they know. Then they will be interested in your new idea. You can buy all the cookies you want. You're not going to reach the early majority. One of the problems with techie things and new ideas is that when marketing people get together, they only think about these two groups, and they are so tiny. They're so small. There was a wonderful book called Crossing the Chasm that said, you're never going to reach most people unless you can make this huge leap from these two groups across that big gap to reach the early majority until you market your product differently. You've got to make them feel safe. You've got to feel that it's okay, other people are doing it. It's not so new or so scary. Well, and then there's the late majority. And they're not going to do it until they have to. If I have to, I guess. One of the projects I worked on in my career was the 777 airplane, the 777. And at the time, that airplane was written in a brand new programming language. Every airplane up to that point had been written in Pascal. Did you know that? You'll probably never get on a plane now, will you? So the 777 was written in Ada, and that was part of my PhD research, was to look at the modular programming languages, including Ada. And I heard this all the time. If I have to, because now programmers who were used to programming in Pascal had to move to Ada. If I have to. They weren't convinced by the benefits of the programming language. That meant nothing to them. They weren't convinced by the mandate from Boeing. Boeing said, you must write this flight management system in Ada. They didn't care. It meant to them that they had to learn a new programming language, and they did not want to do it. You'll get to that point someday in your career. And then, of course, the laggards, we've always done it this way. A lot of that on 777 because the 747, I don't know if you know your airplanes. I spend a lot of time on airplanes, so I know about them. 747 is still flying. That's all written in Pascal. We've always done it this way. Why change? Now, your hope is, of course, because there's so much research around these different groups of people, that their roles, these are not people, they're roles that they play. And what you want to do is move them up. You want to change them. You want to, don't give up on them. You want to keep talking to them. You want to involve them. Of course, we know the older they are, people and organizations, the older they are, the further down in that list. But people can change. I know that. And then, what would it be like if we were all innovators? We'd all be going to the latest and the greatest and the newest and the coolest just because it was the newest and the coolest. And oh my gosh, I have known organizations like that. They can't get anything done. They're always moving on to the next new thing. So this is our tendency, to look at those people who don't immediately want to adopt the idea, and then we label them. I had this problem with Donald Trump. I really don't like to listen to him. I don't want to hear what he has to say. I have just turned him off. I have said, well, he must be bad or stupid or both. Ignore him. So please learn from me. That is not the way forward. For all of those people in your organization who are down at the bottom, who are resisting change, who are not excited about your new idea, this is not the way to go. The approach has to be, use this pattern. The book was named after it, Fear Less. And it says, you have to listen to them. You have to pay attention to those people. More than that, you have to respect them. You have to respect what they have to say. And you have to believe that not only are they not bad, and they're not stupid, they're good people. And they're intelligent. And they have wide experience, most of them. And they might have something valuable to say. And if you just take the time to respect their opinion, if you just take the time to really listen, you'll learn a lot. They'll learn a lot. And what you might find is that you'll listen them. Just by listening, you'll listen them into opening to the new idea. Not by arguing, not by fighting, but by listening, you can move them. It's so hard to do. Another quote from Stephen Covey. He said, your goal in using that pattern, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Unless you know where that other person is coming from, then you can't possibly begin to engage them in a discussion about your new idea. These people who disagree with you can play a valuable role in your organization. This is the pattern champion skeptic. It's always good to have somebody around who doesn't think that your idea is good. It avoids something called groupthink, where everyone goes in the same direction because they all have bought into the new idea. They, as we say, they have drunk the Kool-Aid. It's never good when you don't have somebody whose job it is to say, hold it. I'm not sure we've thought about this. Could we look at this evidence? I have a question to ask. Listen to those people. And a note, this is not about just keeping them busy. This is about learning. Treating these people as though they have a valuable contribution to make. Because the penalty of not having someone who will stand up and say, I'm not sure about this, is that you then all go down the path together, maybe right off the cliff. Always have a champion skeptic. So our last myth. Well, I'm smart, I know. At least half of you are smart people. And you don't need other people to help you. So this is my idea. I want the credit. I want everybody in our organization to say, oh yeah, Linda's the one who brought in agile development. And it's true, I did. It was in 1994 we started doing Scrum. The pattern is called ask for help. And it's counterintuitive. By saying to other people, you know, I can't do this by myself. I need your help. Will you help me? Would you like to try pair programming with me? I've never done it before. By admitting your vulnerability, by admitting that you don't know everything, and by asking other people to contribute, that's the most convincing thing you can do. That's even better than buying cookies. And then make sure you say, thank you. We almost didn't write that pattern. We thought, that's so obvious, isn't it? We forget. There's research around thanking people. It's called a power thanks. It should be sincere. You should mean it. Don't just go through the motions. It should be immediate. It should say exactly what they did and what their contribution was. Gosh, I know you were here all weekend. You got that database problem fixed, and now we can do our customer demo. Wow, thank you. There are so many benefits. Look at that nice long list. And what's not there is the one I really care about. People who have a habit of appreciating others live longer. You know, you could have gone to the other keynote, but you decided to spend the time with me. That really makes me feel good to have a nice room full of people, all these excited Italians. I just want to say thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you very much. I think from all of them. Thank you.